Hi, I'm Julian Kreusser, and I am a visual effects supervisor at King's Ransom Media. I also run the YouTube channel Nodes Aren't Scary, where I make VFX tutorials in Nuke, and you should check them out. But anyway, I'm here today to answer some questions. So first one is, why did I choose visual effects as a career? Well, it is one of my longest standing interests. I started doing visual effects when I was 7 or 8 years old. My dad worked at a TV station, and so I had the chance to use the computers that they had there and play around in After Effects, and I just found it like to be the most awesome thing ever. I was playing around in the software every day and learning as much as I could. I was watching lots of YouTube videos, Video Copilot, Freddie W, the VFX Bro, and I got the help of a mentor eventually. Her name was Irina, and we would meet once a week and just play in After Effects, and it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot through that. Eventually I started doing filmmaking camps. There's the series of camps called Cinema Arts Camp, and I went to those for 8 years, and I started teaching those camps halfway through that. And it was really, I gotta say, if you're trying to learn something, teach it, because you will find all the holes in your knowledge, and it is an excellent way to learn, to try and teach other people. But anyways, cinema arts camps, and from there I built up a portfolio and I started applying to jobs, and now I'm here. So what I like about working in the industry mainly is that I get to do visual effects, applying this practical problem solving, creative problem solving, and you get to solve some really specific problems. That's one thing that's different about working in the industry versus being like a hobbyist, is the things that they ask you to do. Like, it's like, you'd never think to do this if you're just tinkering on your own. Like, I worked on a show where we had to remove some light from a person's face. Like, it was like a sort of a shifting light pattern, and it was such an interesting problem to try and solve, but I would never have tried to do that on my own. I would have had no reason to. And so I like the variety that you get working in the industry, and it's a lot of fun to do the problem solving. Downsides of the industry as it is now is mainly that it can be very stressful. I mean, at King's Ransom Media, we do all right. And I'm trying to do my part as a supervisor in making things not overwhelming for artists, but it gets bad at some companies. Like, I knew a guy who worked a 40-hour shift, not a 40-hour week, but a 40-hour shift, 40 hours straight. And that's like insane. I think that you can't put a movie over the health of the people that work on it. And that's something that needs to change. But we're headed in that direction. I'm going to do my part as best as I can. What are some of your favorite projects you worked on? So probably my favorite project that I've worked on overall was The Legend of Ochi, and it's not out at the time of recording, so like, I can't say too much about it, but I just love how it came together. Like, the movie was not only fun to work on, and the director was a pleasure to work with, Isaiah Saxon, very good director, but it was like, the story was good, the movie looks beautiful, and I'm just excited for it to come out so I can talk about the stuff that we did in it and see it and everything. The most memorable project is probably, I mentioned Freddie W as one of the people that I watched when I was 8 years old. Watched his videos. His name is Freddie Wong, but his channel was called Freddie W back then. And the craziest thing happened was, like, within the first year of working in the industry after getting a job, I got to work on a project with Freddie. He was directing a movie called We're All Gonna Die, and like, I remember being in the Zoom call with him for the first time, and I was like, is this happening? And it was awesome. I got to fly down to LA and go to a premiere, and I met him, and it was really cool, and like definitely a full circle moment. Very memorable. Which software do I use most in my day-to-day work? Well, mainly I use 3 pieces of software. Nuke, number 1. Houdini is probably the second one. And third, Blender. I really do enjoy using Blender. My favorite is Nuke because I use it the most often. It's a compositing software, and I enjoy doing compositing the most, and that's most of the work that I do. I like using Nuke because it's very customizable. You can build your own gizmos and that kind of stuff, and I really enjoy doing that. I also like that there's BlinkScript, although I'm hoping that they expand on BlinkScript a little more. I'd like to see more opportunities for coding, scripting in Nuke. But all 3 of those pieces of software are so powerful. And I love Blender because it's free and it's open source. It's so cool that they're doing that. And I find Blender really useful. I use it in production, actually. And I think more people should. Very powerful software. Well, being a compositor, I think that the future is looking interesting for sure. And I think looking positive. For one thing, well, we've got the obvious technological advancement, a lot of machine learning stuff happening these last few years. I'm not really super into like image generation stuff. I think it can be sort of ethically dubious for one thing, and I don't really like. That's sort of a fun part for me is making images like matte paintings and that kind of thing. But I do see the usefulness in it. That being said, I think where machine learning models really shine is for stuff like roto, and also for depth estimation. That's a super useful thing. And I like being able to train custom models in Copycat. I think that's pretty cool. But besides that kind of stuff, what I'm seeing that I like for the future is that we're getting more unionization. As I mentioned, it gets bad in the industry right now with the hours that people are working, and there's some unfair situations. People are not being compensated properly. People are being, given a ton of overtime and not paid overtime, or just given a ton of overtime, period. I think working people too hard is just, it's bad for everybody. But unionization is a step towards remedying that, clearing that up. And so the Marvel visual effects team has unionized, which is a great step, and I think that we should be getting more of that. And also, what I'm hoping for in the future is that we get more open source software. I think it's wonderful that it's collaborative. I think it's wonderful that open source software is, well, at least most of the time, free, because it reduces the barrier to entry for visual effects. And it's a difficult thing. Like Nuke, of course, they've got like a non-commercial version, which is super cool. But like the actual software, like real license for Nuke is thousands of dollars. And, a lot of visual effects companies will make you bring your own license if you're going to work. And so like, I'm hoping we have Natron, but the adoption is not super large with Natron. And even Blender has a compositing platform. If we could get an open source, completely GPU accelerated, that's my other wish, compositing platform, node-based. I think that would be amazing. That's what I'm hoping for the future. So number 1 is get familiar with your tool. And when I say familiar, I mean like you know it in and out. And I think the best way to do this is just to play and explore, and never think that the best way to do something, because you can find if you get locked into like, okay, this is the one way that I know how to do this thing, and this is maybe the best way, or maybe it isn't, but you miss out on a ton of other possibilities, ton of other approaches that you can use bits and pieces of when you solve new problems. So like all of the different nodes that are available in Nuke, or all the different effects in After Effects, you know what they each do. You can piece together, you can reach into that tool bag and put together a solution for whatever problem you encounter. It makes things, it's very satisfying to be able to do that. And it also increases your ability to problem solve, which is a huge part of visual effects. Second, specialize. If you're trying to get into the industry, you're trying to break in, as they say, don't try and be a generalist. Like, this is something that I needed to hear, because that's like all I ever wanted to do was everything. And when I was trying to get a job, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to make this reel where I demonstrate that I can do everything. I'm going to have tracking and roto and 3D modeling and explosion simulation and green screen and like everything in one video. And it's going to be so awesome. People are going to hire me because of this. But I spoke to a guy while I was looking for jobs, and he's told me, like, don't do that. It's going to be, visual effects companies are looking for spots to fill in their pipeline, specific spots. So they need a person who's really good at tracking and paint and roto, or they need a person that is really good at 3D modeling, or they need a person who is great at blanking on everything right now, or they need a person who's great at rendering or whatever. But if you specialize in one of those disciplines, not only are you more likely to get hired, but it's also faster to get good at it because you're not working on all these skills at once. You're not trying to learn everything at once. You can just pick a smaller subset and then you learn that, and it's faster, and it's easier to break in. Third, always use reference. For some reason, when I was younger, I didn't want to use reference. I thought it was cheating or something, but it's amazing because in a reference image of something that you are trying to create, something similar to, like if you're creating, for example, an image of a hippo in water, for example, and you pull up a reference image of a real hippo in water, all of the information for what makes a realistic composite exists in the reference image. And so all you have to do is train your perception, your eye, to figure out what's different between your comp and the reference image. And it just comes down to like the perception and then being able to make those changes in your composite. But it makes a huge difference. That's one of the biggest things I would say to improve your work, is always use reference. Number 4, use high quality practice footage. You're going to be working on a reel, make sure you have good quality footage to work with. It makes a big difference, not only in terms of like you want to show really good looking footage in your reel, but also it is easier to composite with well shot and high definition footage. Resolution is a component, bit depth is a component, dynamic range is a component. You really pretty difficult to pull a good key on 8-bit footage. And probably spoiled at this point with very high bit depth stuff from some cameras, but it's easier to do good looking visual effects on high quality footage. And there's good spots to get free practice footage from. Action VFX and Peter Timberlake's website, he has got some good practice footage on there. But you can also build relationships with your local indie filmmakers. Like there are Facebook groups for that. Those people may be looking for someone to do visual effects shots, and you can do a little work trade if you're just starting out. Like, can I use this in my reel and do the shot for you for a low price or for free or whatever? And then you've got a relationship with a person and you've got stuff to put in your reel. And finally, last tip, before you approach a shot, and this is something that I had to learn, was that sometimes you'll encounter like a shot that's really confusing. Like you've got a node graph and you can just walk in there and just start putting together pieces. And I still do that, don't get me wrong. But if you just are trying to build it out with no plan, it gets confusing. So start from the top with a paper and pen and write down a plan and like a step-by-step checklist, because sometimes you've also got a huge shot that has like 20 things that you've got to do before it's done, and you can get overwhelmed with it. But if you break it down into a list, you've got a step-by-step plan to follow, and you've got a progress meter. You can say, oh, it's not that overwhelming. I've only got 5 things left to do, and I'll just check them off one at a time. And that was really helpful for me. And yeah, that, and make sure you take breaks. Clean up your scripts too, organize your scripts. But anyway, that's about it for me. Thank you to Madlookz VFX for having me on this channel, and hope you enjoyed the video.